If you're a college student who's ever been broke, stressed about rent, and seen one of those flyers stapled to a bulletin board, easy cash for a few hours of your time, I need you to hear this story before you ever say yes to one of those again. I was 20 years old, a sophomore at a state school in Ohio, and I was $400 short on rent with 6 days to figure it out. I'd already sold my textbooks back. I'd already eaten ramen for 9 days straight. So when I saw the flyer taped to the wall outside the psychology building, I didn't think twice. It said, paid sleep study one night, $300 cash, no experience needed. There was a phone number and a room number, building C, basement level. I called that same afternoon. A woman answered, polite, professional, said her name was Dana, said she was a graduate research assistant working under a professor I'd actually heard of. He taught Intro to Cognitive Science, a class half my dorm had taken. That detail mattered to me. It made the whole thing feel legitimate. She told me to show up at 10 that night, sign a consent form, and I'd be out by 6 in the morning with cash in my pocket. I want you to understand something about college campuses at night. During the day, they're loud, full of people, golf carts, food trucks, professors yelling about due dates. But after 10 p.m., especially in the science buildings, it's like the whole place empties out and forgets you exist. Building C was no exception. The front doors were propped open with a brick. The hallway lights were on that buzzing fluorescent setting that makes everything look slightly green, and there wasn't another living soul in sight. I found the basement stairwell exactly where the flyer said it would be. Walked down 2 flights, my sneakers squeaking against the tile, and at the bottom there was Dana, waiting for me with a clipboard and a tired smile. She looked normal. Tired grad student normal. Hoodie, lanyard, coffee cup. She had me sign 3 pages of paperwork I barely read because I was $20 and $300 away from rent. She led me into a small room with a cot, a heart rate monitor, and a single dim lamp. She said the professor would be in shortly to hook me up to the equipment and explain the protocol. That's when the first thing felt off, though I didn't clock it yet. She locked the door behind her. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft click as she left. I told myself it was standard. Controlled environment, no distractions, that's how sleep studies work. I lay down on the cot. I waited. 20 minutes passed, then 40, nobody came. I started noticing the room itself. No windows. One door. A small vent in the ceiling that hummed faintly, like it was pulling air rather than pushing it. There was a faint chemical smell underneath the dust, something sharp and clean, like a hospital, which didn't match a psych building that I'd walked through 100 times for class and never noticed smelling like anything but old carpet and coffee. I got up and tried the door. Locked. Not stuck, locked. I knocked. Nothing. I called out. Nothing. And here's the part that still sits in my chest at 3 in the morning sometimes. I wasn't scared yet. I was annoyed. I thought, this is some kind of bureaucratic mess. Somebody forgot about me. I'm going to miss the start of my classes tomorrow and not even get paid for it. Then I heard voices, muffled on the other side of the wall, not the door. 2 people, maybe 3. I pressed my ear against the cinder block and caught fragments. A man's voice, calm, almost bored, saying something like, "This one's clean, no flags, we can use him for the full panel." And Dana's voice, quieter, saying something I couldn't make out except for one phrase that I will never forget as long as I live. "He's got family checking in on him, though. We have to be careful with this one." I want to be honest with you. In that moment, my whole body went cold in a way I had never experienced. Because I understood, all at once, that family checking in meant they had run some kind of background check on me before I ever signed a single form. That this wasn't a sleep study. I didn't know what it was. I still don't fully know what it was. But I knew I was not where I thought I was, and I knew I needed to get out of that room before anyone opened that door again. There was no window. There was the vent. I am not a large guy, never have been, and I spent maybe 10 minutes prying the vent cover loose with my house key, cutting my palm open in the process, and I shoved myself up into a duct barely wider than my shoulders. I crawled through that thing in complete darkness, elbows and knees screaming, breathing in dust for what felt like 20 minutes but was probably 5. I came out through a vent in a maintenance closet 1 floor up. The door wasn't locked. I ran through that building barefoot. I'd left my shoes by the cot and out into the parking lot, and I didn't stop running until I reached the campus police substation 6 blocks away, soaked in sweat, half out of my mind. Here's what I learned afterward, piecing it together from campus police and a local news article that ran 2 weeks later and then quietly disappeared. There was no sanctioned sleep study. The professor I'd heard of had no idea his name was being used. Building CS basement had been left unsecured for months due to a renovation dispute, and somebody, they never identified exactly who, had been using empty research rooms to screen and process people for something the article only ever called unauthorized medical activity. I think about that vent more than I think about almost anything else in my life. I think about how close I came to not climbing into it. I think about how easy it would have been to just wait, to trust the system, to assume a locked door in a university building couldn't possibly mean what it meant. If you've ever pulled an all-nighter in an empty building, you need to hear this before you do it again. This happened to me during my second year of college, in a town in Ohio. I was a night owl, always had been. While my roommates crashed by midnight, I came around 11 and worked straight through until sunrise. The campus library stayed open 24 hours during finals week, which is the only reason any of this happened. It was the first week of December, 3 days before my statistics final, and I had maybe 40% of the material down. I packed my bag around 10 at night and walked across campus to the library. I remember thinking the parking lot looked too empty for a Tuesday. The library had 4 floors. Floors 1 and 2 stayed busy even late, full of groups cramming together, coffee cups everywhere, that hum of stressed-out conversation. But I needed silence, so I always went up to the 4th floor. Nobody went up there after midnight. It was just rows of old textbooks nobody checked out anymore, a few desks by the windows, and bad lighting that flickered if you walked too fast under it. I set up at my usual desk in the back corner, the one beside the emergency exit door that led to a metal staircase on the outside of the building. I'd been told that door was alarmed, so nobody used it. I put my headphones in, opened my notes, and got to work. Around 1 in the morning, I noticed the building had gone quiet in a different way. Not just quiet, empty. I went down to the 2nd floor to refill my water bottle, and the groups that had been there earlier were gone. The front desk, where a work-study student usually sat all night, was empty too. There was a paper sign taped to the counter. It said the library was closing early due to a heating system issue, and that the closure had been announced over the campus app 2 hours earlier. I hadn't gotten that notification. My phone had died around 11 and I'd been using my laptop charger, not my phone charger. I figured it was fine, I'd just pack up and head back to my dorm. No big deal. I went back up to the 4th floor to grab my things. That's when I heard the elevator doors close on the 1st floor, way down below me, and the whole building went dark except for the emergency lighting strips along the floor. I stood there in that thin red glow for a second, telling myself it was automatic, that maybe they cut the main power for the night because of the heating issue mentioned on that sign. I grabbed my bag, my laptop, my charger cord still hanging out of the wall, and I moved toward the stairwell. The stairwell door was locked. Not jammed, locked. I tried it 3 times, and the handle didn't even give a 1/4 inch. I went back through the floor toward the main elevator, and the call button didn't light up when I pressed it. No hum, no mechanical sound, nothing, just dead. That's when I remembered the emergency exit by my desk, the one with the alarm. I figured, fine, let it go off, let security come running, I didn't care anymore. I just wanted out. I pushed the bar on that door and it opened without a sound. No alarm, no siren, just the metal staircase leading down into the dark on the side of the building. I want to be clear about something. I am not a person who scares easily. I grew up the type of kid who'd explore abandoned buildings for fun, but standing in that doorway, looking down a metal staircase that disappeared into shadow because the security light at the bottom was out, something in my gut told me not to go down there. I went anyway, because what other option did I have? The stairs were the kind that ring out under your shoes, that metallic clang with every step, and in that silence it sounded like a drum beat announcing exactly where I was. I made it down 2 flights. On the landing of the second flight, my foot hit something that wasn't part of the stairs. It was a backpack, sitting upright against the railing, zipped shut, like someone had set it down and meant to come right back for it. I didn't touch it. I want you to understand that. Every instinct in my body said keep moving, and I did. I got to the bottom of the staircase, and the gate that led out to the parking lot, the one that was always propped open during the day, was shut and padlocked from the outside. I was trapped between a locked gate and a dark staircase, with a stranger's bag sitting on it. I started yelling. I yelled until my throat hurt and nobody came. No security guard, no passing student, nothing. The parking lot beyond that gate was completely empty, every single space, which made no sense for a campus library on a Tuesday during finals week. I climbed the fence. I tore my jacket doing it, but I got over it, and I ran straight to the campus police station 4 blocks away. The officer on duty looked at me like I'd lost my mind when I told him the library was locked down with the power cut and a bag left on the stairwell. He told me the library hadn't closed early that night. There had been no heating issue. No announcement had gone out on the app. I switched my study habits after that. I do my work during the day now, in crowded coffee shops, in dorm lounges with 20 other students around me. I never went back to that 4th floor again. I still think about that backpack sometimes, sitting there on the landing, zipped up neat, like whoever left it knew exactly how long they'd need before someone came looking. And I think about how that gate was locked from the outside, which means somebody had to be standing right there to do it. Somebody who wanted me to go down those stairs. This happened to me during my sophomore year at a state university in Ohio, in a building that's still standing, still being used by students every single day, who have no idea what I know. I was a chemistry major, which meant I spent more time in the science building than my own dorm room. That semester, I had a professor named Dr. Holloway who ran a research lab on the 3rd floor, and he'd given me a key card so I could come in after hours to run experiments for my thesis. Most nights I'd be the only one in the entire wing. The building locked itself down at 11. Security did one pass around midnight, and after that it was just me, the hum of the fume hoods, and silence. I want you to understand something about that building. It was built in the 60s, all concrete and narrow hallways, and the lighting on the upper floors ran on motion sensors to save electricity. So if you sat still too long, the lights would just shut off. You'd have to wave your arms like an idiot to get them back. I used to laugh about it with my lab partner. We called it the building's mood swings. It was a Tuesday in October when things started going wrong. I was alone, running a distillation that needed babysitting every 20 minutes, so I had time to kill. I was sitting at a desk outside the lab, scrolling through my phone, when the lights cut off like they normally did. I didn't think anything of it. I waved my hand. Nothing happened. I waved again, still dark. I stood up and walked toward the sensor, and that's when I heard it. Not footsteps, not breathing. A sound I can only describe as metal scraping against tile, slow, deliberate, coming from the stairwell at the end of the hall. The kind of sound a chair makes when you drag it 2 inches at a time. I told myself it was maintenance. People fix things at night, right? I went back to my desk and tried to focus on my phone, but the scraping kept going, on and off, for almost 10 minutes. Then it just stopped. The lights flickered back on a second later, and I felt stupid for being scared of nothing. I finished my experiment around 1 in the morning, cleaned up, and headed out. The science building connects to a parking structure through an underground walkway, which I'd used probably 200 times without a second thought. That night the walkway lights were out, not flickering, just gone, every single bulb. I had my phone flashlight, so I figured I'd just power through it, get to my car, go home. About halfway down the tunnel, my flashlight caught something on the wall. Long, deep gouges in the concrete, at about chest height, running for maybe 15 feet. Fresh, you could see dust still sitting in the grooves like they'd just been made. I stood there for a second, telling myself it was probably some construction thing, some equipment that got dragged through there. But I couldn't explain why concrete would be carved up like that. Concrete doesn't scratch easy. You need something heavy, something with real force behind it. That's when I heard the scraping again. Same sound from the stairwell, except now it was behind me, in the tunnel, getting closer. I didn't turn around. I'm not going to pretend I was brave because I wasn't. I just ran. I ran the rest of that tunnel faster than I've ever run in my life, burst through the door into the parking structure, and didn't stop until I was in my car with the doors locked. I sat there shaking for probably 15 minutes before I could even drive home. The next day, I told my lab partner what happened, half expecting him to laugh at me. He didn't. He went pale and told me he'd heard something similar 2 weeks earlier, but he never mentioned it because he figured he was just tired and hearing things. We decided to check the tunnel together that evening before doing any more late nights. The scratches were still there. Trevor took a photo of them on his phone. We walked the length of the tunnel, flashlights up, hearts pounding, and found nothing else out of place. No broken equipment, no construction signs, nothing that explained it. We reported it to campus security the next morning. They sent someone to look, and within an hour, we got called into the facility's office. The man there, older guy, looked like he'd worked there for 30 years, asked us very specifically if we'd seen anyone else in the tunnel. We said no. He nodded slowly and told us, almost too casually, that maintenance crews had been patching similar marks in that tunnel for years, and they were caused by carts being dragged improperly. I asked him why, if it was just carts, the marks were always at the same height, always the same length, always in that same stretch of tunnel. He didn't really answer. He just said the university was aware of it and that we shouldn't worry, that it was a structural issue they were monitoring. A structural issue. In concrete. I've taken enough materials science classes to know that's not how concrete behaves. A week later, curiosity got the better of me, and I did something I probably shouldn't have. I pulled up the university's public incident logs, the kind every campus has to post for safety compliance. I searched the building's name and scrolled back through almost a decade of entries. Most of it was nothing: broken pipes, fire alarm tests, the occasional theft report. But every couple of years there was a single line that stopped me cold. Facilities requested for unexplained damage, lower-level connector tunnel. No further details. No explanation given. Just that same vague phrase, repeated again and again across 10 years, like a pattern nobody wanted to put a name to. I showed my lab partner, and for the first time since this whole thing started, he looked more disturbed than scared. He said something I haven't been able to shake. He said, "What if it's not something that happens to that tunnel? What if it's something that happens in it, on a schedule we just don't understand yet, and we'd simply stumbled into the wrong week?" I never found out what actually caused those marks, and at some point I stopped looking, because some answers come at a cost you don't want to pay. But I know what I heard, and I know what I saw, and I know that facilities workers' face didn't belong to a man explaining a maintenance issue. It belonged to a man who'd had this exact conversation before, with other students in other years, and was tired of having it again. What scares me the most isn't the scratching, or the lights, or even the sound following me into that tunnel. It's the way that facilities workers' face changed when we mentioned exactly where the marks were, like he already knew, like it wasn't the first time someone had come to him with that exact story. I switched my late-night research sessions to the daytime after that. I never went back into that tunnel after dark again. We finished our degrees, we graduated, we moved on with our lives. But I still think about that building. I think about how many other students are walking through that same tunnel right now, at 1 in the morning, completely alone, with no idea what's carved into the walls just past wherever their flashlight stops reaching. If you made it this far, hit subscribe and press the bell icon so you never miss what's coming next. Drop a comment and tell me which story got under your skin the most. I read every single one. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, hit that like button. Got a story of your own? Send it in the comments. Stay safe out there. I'll see you in the next one.